Well, hi. I was remembering the different full moons that I've gonged at, and I was thinking about, well, maybe we all should think about the time track and go backwards and see if we can recall the highlights, let's say, of the time that you were invited to play a gong for a ceremony, either the equinox or the solstice. Uh, we might share that.
So, do you remember your first full moon?
I have to go first?
Yes.
Well, why don't you go first?
Is it too early? So for the people
first.
around the globe who have been up for several hours,
Yeah.
do you have a recollection of your first gong full moon or solstice? We talked about what you're doing this in the next coming days, but are you able to go back in your time track and remember that first full moon gong or that first spring equinox?
Well, I remember I used to get the full moon gong and the new moon gong mixed up. Then I thought, well, any gong will do ya. So that both of them are okay, whether they're. Do you remember which one is for the full moon ceremony and which moon gong is for the new moon? Do you?
Are you talking in terms of hertz frequencies?
Yeah, what their frequencies are. One's an A sharp and one's a G sharp. So the G sharp moon and the A sharp moon then resonate to different chakras, but either one will do. But gong is a gong. So I used to travel with my 28-inch Paiste symphonic gong. And I didn't have a stand. I just carried the gong with me wherever I went. And one day, on a full moon ceremony, I was in Africa, in Uganda. And some of you have heard the story before. And I was invited to play the gong at a full moon ceremony for a tribe of over 100 natives that lived there in Uganda. And so when my cue came to play, I began to play, and I did all the motions we do with the dancing gong. And after I started, all of the natives fell to the ground screaming. And then that shocked me a little bit because I was going to remember this forever. And then I played the gong, and then when I was finished with it, they got up from the ground, and it was over. So that was one experience that I had. And I was on a mission to deliver a gong to a tribe in Africa. And so I carried the gong there, played the gong in ceremony, then gave it to the tribal leader to keep with his tribe.
Was there a translator?
No, they spoke English.
So did they explain what their reaction was about? Was there a sharing aspect to the end of it?
Well, no, that wasn't really clear. All I know is that maybe it was a tradition that they all fall over at the same time. I don't know. Well, all right. So it wasn't a big experience, but it was stuck in my memory.
You set the bar a little high. I've never played for an African tribe and had them fallen over. So.
But you played for maybe Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or some other tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, so it's a full moon, and Michael, you told us all about the full moon. And
I shared what we're doing for full moon tomorrow, which is drumming. It's a different kind of gong, and we all get to play. So we've got drums here at the center. I think for me, one of my first full moon gong experience that really impressed upon me, I was in Dubai, and the gong really brings different people together, and I was I met this woman, and she was running a healing center out of her villa,
Uh-huh.
and she invited me to do a full moon gong, and I was like, yeah, we can do that. So I brought it was outdoors, and I brought the big gongs, and I realized it was an all women's event, and so I can remember it was a beautiful full moon. It's, it was getting warm, so we were outside, but 50 women, 50 or so women, all in abayas, and then when they arrive, they can be comfortable and they take their abayas off, and it's all lounge chairs and pretty. Um, it's like a hotel, but it's at a woman's house, at her house, and I can recall just holding space, and this is about the sound and vibration, and remembering the gong is going to take me to some cool places like the drum does, and it in Dubai, in the Middle East, to be a man in a space with all women, and their uncles, their husbands, their brothers, their sons are not there. Uh, it is pretty incredible, and I think Erika can totally relate to. It was Al Huda behind the Choi drums. So you've probably you may have been to that center as well. So those, to be able to go in there during the full moon and just to just be accepted as a gong person without gender is really incredible for me. So yeah, the gong takes us to some cool places. I'm really blessed for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember playing in the desert as well, with the camels all around, and so beautiful. Uh, yes, the drums and the gongs. What's the relationship between the drums, which chakra, and which one for the gongs, do you think? How would you say that they are? They're yin and yang, aren't they? I think drums are more yang and the gong is more yin. So
Well,
it's
and I think of it as the drums are Stone Age and the gongs are Bronze Age. There's still, to me, there's still instruments from the north because they have a beat. So in what I share is that any instrument, drums, sticks, stones, or gongs that can be played in a beat is a northern instrument. For me, it's heart. So I would say heart chakra, both the drum and the gong. I totally recognize yin and yang, and that you shared, Don, and hadn't really thought of it that way, but certainly, and it's a heartbeat, so they're both instruments of of thankfulness and gratitude. So we to have a gong, I'm very grateful to be able to share it and play it. So that's some the energy that I get to draw from when I get to play gongs, wherever we're playing gongs or drums.
I would love to understand more about that concept that you just said. What do you mean yin and yang?
well, we tried while we were in the desert to mix the drums and the gongs together. It was like a battle of which one which one can you hear. We got like louder and louder and louder in the desert, and it became very interesting how they would blend together. It was like the snake swallowing its tail. It had these two going on at the same time. I don't know what we achieved from that, but there were some moments where they seemed to intersect.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Erica,
and that's really It's really got to be a listen. The facilitator really has to listen, and it's very possible to blend it. We've blended it with live drummers and gongs at large yoga fests in Dubai. It does take the ability to come down in volume so that we can hear all the instruments, and sometimes we want the drums to overpower the gongs, and sometimes we want the gongs to overpower the drums, but that's all got to be like part of the conductor. Definitely a conducted event, and it is possible because we do it all the time, but it does take really taking the ego down, because not everybody can be a soloist at the same time, because then it does become noise. I can imagine the folks like Julianne in that experience with all that energy, just like becomes overwhelming to her in that desert event that you were part of, and it just how do you stop the water from going over the dam when it's already going over the dam? It's like, how do you bring that back without just saying, everybody quiet? Or just saying, let's just listen for a little while and let's listen to the stars and then bring it back in.
We tried several things. One, in order to contain the energies, so we would have our choreographer, our orchestrator, conductor, dancer, pantomimist, using telepathic resonance and gestures to be able to bring up the sound, bring down the sound, blend the sounds. And so we started doing that. We tried it with one person in the center. And then we realized, well, why don't we have four quarters? We have four conductors for the four quarters, like that. But what happened was that everybody then jumped into the middle of the circle and they began to just do freestyle gong dancing and drum dancing at the same time in the center. It got to be kind of interesting.
Well, it seems like a full moon is all about celebration. So if people are able to release any inhibitions or rules and just
Yeah.
go free out, that makes sense
Yeah.
that would be the energy that happens with that. I saw that Erika raised her hand. Erika, did you want to share something?
Yes, my first full moon was at the beach in Dubai. Maybe you were there as well with Sita, remember? Yeah?
Uh-huh.
And it
Yes.
was really interesting because we were very close to the ocean, and it blended the sound of the waves perfectly with the gong. So when the gong went quiet, you could hear the ocean. And it was also interesting because in Dubai you have a lot of restrictions, as Michael was saying, and you cannot have large groups anywhere. Like it's not allowed to have a congregation anywhere in public spaces. So I remember once there were like 40 people in our gong session in the full moon. Even local women approached us. And I think this was this Al Huda lady because she did Reiki, right? And she
Mm.
approached me and she said, "Yes, I love this." I don't remember her name. She was Egyptian. And please come to my center and I will introduce you. And she took me and I started doing yoga classes at her center. She had a nice view of Burj Khalifa. And then she brought all the autistic kids because there are a lot of autistic kids in Dubai, and special needs because they intermarry with the families. And it was very interesting because the kids, they really related to the gong. They loved it. I don't know if you had also that experience, Michael. And Don, maybe you will remember the first time you went to Dubai and we had a concert in an open space. It was in a park
Yes, I remember
with
that.
lots of people playing the gongs, and
And
almost we
no,
were levitating.
nobody came.
No, yes, yes,
They
yes, they
come.
were, yeah. And it started raining.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
Yes.
and in Dubai we didn't have rain. It was like 4 times a year, and whenever it rained, everybody would go outside like little kids. And I remember that night it rained. It was you and Adam McIntyre playing, and Tom, I think, I don't know, many people. And
Mhm.
Sita, it was very interesting. You were there as well, maybe. Yeah, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. And where you were saying about the drums, because I also had the experience with drumming and gonging. At first, we do the drum circle, and after that, we did the gonging. And it was a very nice combination because I think the drums are very grounding, is down to earth in the first three chakras, and then the other instruments bring it up. So it was very, very good. And then we blended with the flute, and we had a guy playing the crystal didgeridoo. That was super experience. So yes, it's a good combination, I think. Yin and yang, exactly. Thank you.
I wonder, Julie, when you're playing in Taiwan, are you playing with other gong players in terms of orchestration, or is it just you?
Sometimes I just only mine, but sometimes I will collect my students will to do the bigger events like the Buja the stand. The following we just every year end we have the big Buja in the Taiwan different press in the South, the Middle Taiwan, South Taiwan, and East Taiwan, and North Taiwan. So every year, and the year end, we will start to fall events to Gong Pujas. So not only just me, yes, because we as we are we live in the small island, so we can get together to Pelago.
And there's
And
something.
there's something.
What's up with
What's up
that
with that
stereo?
stereo?
So
So
strange.
strange.
Because we didn't have
We
it.
didn't have it.
All right.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I think
I
it's
think
with
it's with
Julie's mic
Julie's mic
on.
on.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay.
Oh yeah, if I mute Julie, I muted you and the stereo went away. Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think Julie has a really nice microphone, and it's really good, and it picks up the speakers from her laptop, from Julie's laptop. I think that's what's happening, Julie, is that your microphone is so good that it's picking up the speakers and feeding it back into the system. It's known as echo, or it can continue as looping and then get into what's known as feedback. So that's all that's happening. It's just we need to be conscious of our microphones. That's all.
I wonder, does the setting on the Zoom if you've checked off the echo cancellation under audio, it's worth checking out. Bernarda, I know you have your students in Croatia, and then are you doing, like you said, you do once a month? Is it just you, or are you doing in collaboration and orchestration with your students?
Sometime I have guests players, but I played almost alone Gong Bat. When I have Gong Puja, I have guests, my colleagues. And I would like to share my first experience with full moon. When I was teenagers girl, I was in the village by my grandmom, and I was sleeping in the little room with little window. And in the middle of the night, uh, when I woke up, I saw a bright round on my pillow, and I saw through the window there is full moon, and after when I see full moon, it's joyful for me from the beginning. And I can't remember which was my full moon gong bath. There was many gong bath in full moon, and I can say I think I'm little more grounding than usual in this time. And my gong bath, my feeling is it's better. Yeah. That's my experience for now.
Nice. Wow. I was thinking about the past gong experiences. Um, the first time you heard a gong, it's very important in your life. The situation, where you were at that time, who was playing, it marks a very important event. And then the time that you give your first gong experience to somebody else, let's say a group of people. And then the next great experience would be when you're with other gong masters and other musicians, and you now have to do sacred tone improvisation. A sort of what that is just simply a weaving. Uh, so we weave the sound around when we improvise together, with or without sometimes a conductor. And so this particular, where it's like a fire burning in the middle of the forest, the flame goes up and it begins to dance of its own accord, and we simply become a part of it. So there's all these different wonderful adventures that we have with us. It would be nice to be able to share different ones, unusual ones. Uh, Maybe some, like the gong flying off the string and flying through a crowd, is not the best memory I have, but it's a happening,
It's a memory
a memory.
with a good ending.
Amen. Yeah. So
Erika.
I have a strange one. You just reminded me. Last year in the spring equinox, I was playing at this like a garden. It was a public place, and I had a yoga class first, and I was sitting with the gong beside me, but I was sitting on a little platform, and it was so windy. I was with my eyes closed in the meditation, and then the gong just did this and fell in front of me, flat on the grass, and I just felt the malice like whoosh above my head. It didn't hit me, it didn't hit anyone, and it just felt like flat. It was very strange. It's the only time that something like that has happened to me. And a friend told me maybe the land needed healing. So I don't know. It was weird.
what is a gut check? It's very important to gong players to make a gut check. Where did that come from, and what does it mean?
You mean the god that goes on the string?
Yeah.
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 No, it was
No.
perfectly hanging there. I think it was too windy, and it just like the wind blew exactly in the middle of the gong with
Oh.
a lot of force.
So the gut was still intact.
Everything, it fell with the whole
And
with the frame,
oh,
with the
the whole
stand.
The frame too. Oh my.
Yes, I had the square one, and
Yeah.
even the stand, everything fell like this, not just the gong.
Well,
And
that
the
was.
gong did not, you know, the god was still attached and everything. It was the whole thing.
Oh,
I just remembered from that sharing after I did the 2003 Gon's house, it was in Dorset, the 10-day Gong Master training, and I came back to LA and I was doing monthly gongings. And I don't think this was covered at the time in the 10-day Gong Master training. In any case, I was playing and it was just myself, and there were about 25 people there, and I was playing in a yoga studio, and it was a double frame, and I had the gong on top and the gong on the bottom, and the whole frame started to like slowly fall apart while in the middle of the gonging. So I remember like holding it with my leg and my arm, and I just looked at the time and I was like, okay, I have 15 minutes left. And then it was a completely different experience of gonging while holding this stand together.
Yeah, we
So-
used to assign a person who wasn't playing the gong to be around just in case something happened, like the stand collapsing, whatever. So, or squeaking was the big problem, especially when we were recording the event. But now it seems like we've gotten rid of the squeaking. Do your stands squeak when you play? They still do. No.
Some of them do.
Yeah.
Or if you have like a tick 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 tick, I think that's a newbie's mistake as well. And then you realize that the gut, the tie on the gut has a little bit of an extra bit, and so while you're playing, it's the sheepskin gut ones go tick 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 tick, and then figuring that out. Though there's also, for the people who've played by the numbers with their post-its, there's something to be said about the sound of the post-its and paper flapping as you're playing by the numbers.
Well, anyway, the playing by the numbers is sort of like what's hot on the front burner right now. I was reading about some pianists who are playing by the numbers now. Pi, they do a pi concerto or a phi concerto. Well, the same thing applies to the gong master of ceremonies, or the person who's playing by the number. And what that does to the playing is interesting. It really develops a sort of we call it the third ear, the inner ear, where we listen to the difference tones between the strikes, or between the overlapping sounds. And so the third ear is listening for the children tones, we call them progeny, and also we can hear the parent tones. And we begin to develop a special way, it's called triadic. And in that thing, the brain cells that are being stimulated in the prefrontal cortex mostly, but then again, it depends on if they're lying on their stomach or lying on their back, become stimulated in a certain way. So that that's why we have people turn over, is not just because they're getting sore lying on their back or something, so that the sound ray, the sonal ray, can enter the brain from different directions. So this is why we do that. Hello, who's that?
Tia's joining us.
Tia, hi Tia.
Yes, Erika.
Yes, so I have a question. You would turn them over like halfway through the gong bath?
Yes, it might be a cue, like we'll use the bowls or anything else, or a sound. Whenever you hear this, no matter how deep you are in your meditation, it means turn over, or turn a quarter, or whatever you want to do. And that way it's helpful to them, because you can go totally unconscious when you're listening to the instruments, and you don't know, oh, is it over? I didn't even know it started. It can be that type of a loss of time. But what this does is to keep you totally awake while you're totally asleep. This is called the state of Turiya. Oh, look who's here. Hi.
Hello.
And that state of Turiya, we call holistic neutrality, is very important, because it gives a signal to the glands of the body that produces certain hormones into the system to be able to go ahead and create these new brain cells. Of course, the most ones are in the cerebral cortex here, in this area here. So these little things that we do have a sort of hidden function behind them, behind the scenes of what actually is there. And for people to be able to go in several times, a secret would be that in mystery plays or initiation plays of the past, there were always 5 acts. Each one of those 5 acts had a particular function to do, like a miniature version, a microscopic version of, let's say, 7.5 hours of sleep at night. So that it was constructed so that in a classical sense, you were going in and out of consciousness, of being awake while asleep, in the different phases of sleep at night. So when we gong for people, we're simply taking that phenomenon and reducing it down in a window of time of 45 minutes. Now, when Yogi Bhajan first told me, this is back in 1968, 69, he says that one gong thing is equal to 45 minutes of sleep. So I put together back in the day those 10 of those 45-minute gong baths. That's 450 minutes. And we did it, we called it the all-night gong puja. So that, and then we worked out some ingenious ways of keeping everybody slightly awake at different times so that they can come in and out like that, and get used to that. So that was how we began to do it. And of course, it caught on, and people began to do the all-night gong pujas all over the world, trying to bring the 10 days into the 8.5 or to 10-hour pujas. And that was, I think, a big step for the gong.
There's something about getting kind of stuck in a routine. So if you're doing your monthly or weekly gong baths and you have a sort of routine where you bring them in and you've got your bookends and you do your stretches and your pranayama and then you lie down, especially when you're working with a group of people or a group of participants on a regular basis, changing it up, not just thematically based on the moon cycle or the season, but thematically. One of the ones we're talking about with turning the people over at various stages of your gong bath is something that I did on a Mother's Day gonging. And so it was Mother's Day and it was all about celebrating the mother and self-care. And so that idea of gonging in a certain position for 20 minutes and then bringing them out. And I had little index cards. So it was like also a journaling process so they could write down their experience. And then they turned over and now they were on their stomach. So they were getting the gong bath on the back. And then that was 20 minutes. And then so they were also able to give me some feedback and also themselves some feedback through those testimonials of what did that feel like. And so it also allows them to stay out of their box and keep trying different ways. So because you have the people who immediately will put their head towards the gong, and you have the people who put their feet towards the gong, and that kind of polarity is one direction. And then this idea of doing head towards the gong and face down, and then up, and head away from the gong, face down. That's now 4. And now we haven't even gotten on our sides yet and done all of the meridians and all of the organ systems on the side. So it's a nice way to make the gong bath, especially, I mean, I was playing with things because it was just me with an audience, with the group. So it wasn't like I was collaborating with another gong player. So keeping things interesting for myself as well in terms of kind of playing with it. But the playing with one other person or a few other people, that for me is always the most fun.
Yes. And but interesting as well is that on the Enneagram face of the gong, the number 9, which is completion and bliss. You see, that's where we want to take have people go. So we're gonging for samadhi. And this idea of playing with one hand, clapping, so to speak, meaning using just one hand to gong with, is an important skill. Because then you can follow, let's say that you took a phi or pi or e or any of the so many irrational fractions that give us our practice on the gong, to develop this part of the brain, that we would then be able to add in the overtoning while we're playing. So we do the one hand gonging, the other hand is in a different mudra here, and we have a selection of mudras to do so that we are actually stretching certain acupuncture meridians at the same time, and the one hand is gonging in the pattern. And that leaves, what's the third element here? Would be the humi, or the overtoning, that we would use to project the zonal ray of the fifth chakra into the gong and have it resounded back to us so that it becomes a loop. So all of these things is why we love the gong so much, I guess. But what happens generally is that once you do it for several times, it becomes automatic, and then it's just you become just a vessel. What do you think?
I was thinking about the questionnaire, which I don't know if it's been changed, how often it gets changed throughout the years that you give to your students or participants when you're doing a workshop or a training to kind of assess them. And I was thinking about the fact that that would be a really good add-on or an update to the assessment of how comfortable are you using your voice when you play the gong or when you do your rituals. Because I think a lot of us, we get very into the gong and we don't think about necessarily utilizing the voice.
Well, this is
in that.
a secret technique. In other words, you are actually doing the A-E-I-O-U's and the diphthongs with the gong and sort of enjoying blending in, and where they disappear and they come out and this weave is going on. But the people who are listening don't know that. And then afterwards, when you have your feedback and ask, how was it for you? Da, 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 and then somebody will always say, well, I kept hearing this voice in the gong. And so you know that you were successful, or the gong was successful with you, and it was projecting into the person, and they were hearing the voice of the silence, we call it. Yeah.
Is there a specific intention you work in while you're doing your diphthongs and your overtoning?
Well, it isn't. It's like it's always like that. An instrument of divine grace. Whatever it is that you decide you're going to do, you're not going to do it. You're going to do something better, something else. And it won't be through your egos, because the ego goes away. So what do we have left? We just become a vessel. And we go in and out, of course. Depends upon the venue, it depends upon the situation and all that. Some of the times we have to focus on the moving asanas of playing, of stretching the body in different positions. I'm not like a ballet, but it would be like we would really be creating a stretch and a play so that the psychological gesture carries an energy, so that the movement, rather than just standing in front of the gong as we do sometimes, of course, only, we began to become like the Kundalini itself and to begin playing like that. So this is also a very powerful way of working with the chi in the room.
So, like serpent energy?
Well, yeah. So all of these things are so valuable to us, and they carry over to the person, even if they're lying on their stomach and they don't see anything at all. It isn't for show, it's for actual magic work. We call it Gong magic.
So it's that idea of Tai Chi, Kung Fu, dance,
Qigong,
Qigong.
all of that. And this is like, we used to do this in the early days, did we not? Maybe we still do it. We call the barefoot boogie. Does that ring a bell?
That feels like a very 60s terminology.
Barefoot boogies were in. And so it was to become a channel. And of course, there was another name for it. It's called Ladihan. Ladihan was where you allow your higher self to come in and you take a break and allow the body to go through the free dance, so to speak, of the energies. So we try to combine them when we can think about it and it's the right occasion.
Want your stand?
Yeah, thanks.
Who's that?
I see Bob is here, Ines,
Look at that.
Hannah, Tia, Lindsay. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about
Hello.
various full moon experiences. If you can go back on your timeline and remember the first full moon or the first full gong that you either played or experienced. We were sharing some stories. Don took us to Africa to a tribe. We went to Dubai with Michael and with Erika. So if any of you want to unmute and share your full moon experience, or possibly we also discussed what we're doing tomorrow for the full moon, the warm moon, spring moon, Virgo moon, as well as the spring equinox on Sunday.
What's that on your head?
Bob, what is on your head? Don wants to know. Looks like a bear.
What's it do?
It
Uh-oh, we lost him.
Uh-oh.
It looks like part of a kid's game.
oh no, it's my hat,
Oh,
and it's got a bear on the front, and it gives me a nice fuzzy feeling on my third eye.
perfect.
Do you recommend them?
It appears that he needs to go take off his video in order for the audio to work. While he's figuring out his audio video setup, Claudio, welcome.
Well, that gives us a kind of a discussion too, is about if you're listening to something else while you're doing something else, what's the magic, huh? So sometimes what we'll do, I've even put it on like a Beatles song, or John Lennon song or something, and then I would play the gong accompanying the song like that. And I found that there were certain songs that were more natural for me than others.
In this respect, are you wearing it on a headphone and you're listening to it privately while you're gonging other people? Or is this something that everyone's listening to the Beatles and the gong at the same time?
Nobody has a clue. It's very, you do it magically.
So it's only in your ears.
Yeah.
And they get that creation of what that sounds like.
Of course, the other thing is okay too, where you mix your outward sound, your exterior sound, with the exterior sound of a band or something at the same time, and you can go in and out of like that way. So, but that's a nice hat, Bob, and a nice shirt too. Look, he's the only one of us really dressed to kill. Look at that.
Thank you, Don.
Beautiful.
I'm
I
wearing.
have a hood too.
Oh, nice.
He's got his green for St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Is that?
These are my geodes. The geode tie-dye. A friend of mine makes them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like if you did a heat map of a gong, what it would look like.
Now, Bob's a very theatrical director and actor, and we are planning to have a big gong happening in New York at some time, where as we begin to develop around the world, people can come to New Jersey or to New York and prepare for the great event. That'll be our Broadway opening, I guess.
Yeah.
Off-Broadway opening, maybe.
For sure. I'm meeting with Pascal tomorrow, I think.
Oh, good.
And then you'll take it to London and Los Angeles and all around the world.
And then wherever we go, whoever the local gong masters are, they'll be automatically part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
The concert.
For sure.
Really would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's all.
Right.
It's all.
Let's ask Bob a question here. What was the most unusual event that you ever gonged?
Unusual event.
The nuns.
The nuns. We gonged 30 nuns
From all over the world.
from all over the world. The Sisters of St. Joseph. They all came. There were some of them were in wheelchairs, and some of them managed to walk. And they sat outside in the sunshine, and we set up some gongs and we gonged them. And what was really interesting was how open they were to it. as nuns, and how much they enjoyed it. Actually, really appreciated the whole thing, and it was a wonderful day.
Yes, playing for the handicap, I think, is our dharma. If you haven't done it yet, it's a wonderful experience that you can be a channel. Yes, go ahead. He wants
Yeah,
to,
no, I was going to say that exactly. And hey, Bob, it's really nice to see you as well. And hi, everybody. I had this experience last Sunday. I had told a friend that has an ashram that I wanted to do some karma yoga, and he said, "How about playing for some handicapped children?" And I said, "I'm in for sure." And but I never, when I arrived, I never thought that the degree of it was not a light handicap. There were severely handicapped children that were there. There were 5 only, and it was an experience out of this world because they were reacting. I had gongs and I had crystal bowls. I was in between both of them, and I could feel this. There was this one of the children was blind, but he sat up and he was looking at me, and I don't know how. And he was like 8 years old, and the other one is a 9-year-old that has the mental age of a less than 1-year-old, so he's really not mobile, can't really walk, whatever, but he just went into a total space of joy. He was just cracking up, he was just laughing, and I was gonging with his laughter, and it was the most rewarding experience I've ever had. I have to say, it was literally last Sunday.
well, I think it is. Everybody should have that experience. I remember when I had my first experience with special needs children. They took their oily fingers and they had to touch my gong. I wasn't ready for that at the time, but now I am. And so that has to be wiped off right away from the gong. Otherwise, it won't come off. I don't know if you had that experience or not.
I didn't no mirror gongs or anything. I went with a very standard one, but they were not mobile. They were really lying down. But I did put a mallet in one of the hands of the kids, and he didn't want to get up, but at least that he had a feeling of what holding a mallet was like.
You have some stories about gonging for special needs or people coming with kids of special needs when you were in Eastern Europe,
Yes.
like in the 90s.
We had
right?
special events just for children and their parents, special needs families. And of course, the mother would always stand guard over the child, and we'd have the child lie down in sleep pose and just absorb the sounds. But mother would stand by, or that she would play a gong near the child herself, and we would combine that together so that therefore there would be a secure environment for mom and child. I remember that.
I think Claudio, if you're able to go back there regularly, it's an amazing, I want to say miraculous, but it's more of just the mystery of what it's doing to the brain, because I know that you've shared experiences and other mothers have shared experiences where you have children who, like you said, maybe are under the age of 1 in terms of their physical functioning, and the gong does something. So regular sessions of that, you did have someone who came up to you maybe 10 years later. You'd gonged the kid when he was 6, and then his response was so great that the mother went around to the other gonging that Don was
right, yes.
doing.
The child was very like this, calm, and the mother brought the child and was very young, and so we gonged him, and he showed up at another place. We gonged him again and again and again while we were on the road. And then years later, the mother brought the child back, and he was standing very tall, very straight, and somehow or another he had rejuvenated his cells at that time. That was a wonderful experience. I'd forgotten about
Right.
it.
So the thing is, it's what happened was you'd have these. They actually trained and they kept regularly gonging the special needs children, and the whatever it was able to do with the brain was, something that hadn't
It's so
been seen by the
interesting, isn't
doctors.
it?
Yeah.
When we have a lot of gongs playing, or even one or two, if we play lightly, what happens? We can more easily hear the combination of the tones alchemic get together. As we raise the amplitude, the volume up higher and higher, what happens? At different levels, and of course, it doesn't take too long before the outer hearing is turned inner. It doesn't have to be very loud to do that. But once it does become louder and louder, there are certain pressure intensity levels in the acoustical space, or if you're in the desert, out in the desert, depending upon, the inversion layer over the sand. So the idea is that what happens at these different levels of amplitude as we go towards what we call the waterfall sound.
Oh, that you're asking a question to everybody?
Yeah.
What happens, guys? Are you moving into pink noise or white noise?
Well, waterfall sound would be pink. The white sound, of course, is also stronger. So it's both of those levels. What happens when we do climb the Mount Meru very nice and slowly, so that we don't get the bends as we go up, and then we reach the top of Mount, and then at that spot, what happens?
Erika?
Yes, what happens is, in my experience, that it takes you to the ethers. It's like you disintegrate. Your body is not there anymore. You change your cells, your electromagnetic field. Everything is like going somewhere else. Your physical body is there, but you are no longer there.
Your brain can't hold on to the sound anymore. So it just gives up, and ideally you have a disintegration of the ego and just
Also, there is a point that you reach, that I have reached with two gongs, not with more, with two gongs that I play, where I've gone beyond the pink noise. And it was a moment of 1 or 2 or 3 seconds, but the intensity was so high that there is this whole massive reboot. It's like a reboot of the system. But in terms of the sound, there was a point where I felt I was at the eye of the hurricane, because it was the moment of total calmness and no sound. There was so much sound that suddenly it was like somebody turned off the sound for a few seconds, and then it came again.
It's a little dangerous territory, I must admit. It's like fighting on the frontiers of, exploring the edge. Because at that time, all the 26,000 or so cilia hairs of the inner ear swoon, meaning that there's a direct channel into the auditory cortex at the back. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes that after we do shunya, after playing gong, we hear the gong in the silence afterwards. Well, okay, all right, so it's a phenomenon, but also it's a warning to the gong player. If you play too loud, too long, that you can damage those hairs so that you then have what is called tinnitus. The gong has got a little tin in, but it's not the same thing. You develop the ringing of the ears. Which happens with people in old age very often because of the calcification of the ear. However, it's good not to do too much too long. A little will do you in that particular, because it's a launch point. Hmm. And then we go into the total fullness of silence afterwards. And going in and out of that is called climbing Mount Meru, or climbing the Himalayan mountains, so that we begin to develop a certain uh, trekking way of. Somebody else could say something else about
You
that.
know, makes me think. I'm curious to kind of open this up to everyone. So I'm a health practitioner. I'm an acupuncturist in the clinic, and what I've seen a lot more of, I would say, in the last 5, 6 years, are people experiencing vertigo and issues with the crystals in the ear canals shifting in such a way where they have just horrible vertigo. So there are all these different techniques that you do to get the crystals aligned correctly. But I was wondering, and none of these people go to gong baths, and I was wondering, I wonder if the gong would sound would help release some of these the crystal formations, because really, I mean, that's what Sufi spinning is, right? It's a way of anti-aging and keeping yourself young. As we get older, that's stagnation. Anyway, I'm wondering what you guys
Bob,
think.
you had his hand up.
Hey, um, I mean, personally, in a gong bath, I very rarely get to that point. If it's a public gong bath and I have people visiting that I've never met before, I would say probably almost never for people I haven't met that I'm not working with. But if I work with someone on a regular basis who comes usually for like a one-to-one session, maybe after 5 or 6 sessions, if they're ready for it, we'll get up somewhere near there. But I was going to. That's one of the things I was going to say, Don, about the swooning. It's I think it's a very particular, powerful point, and not everybody is ready for that. Because I think if emotionally you're not ready for it, it can put people off coming back. So I think it's an area of expertise to want to take people there, especially if they're not ready.
We used to have a big jar of earplugs, and you might try it because it develops something inside of you, listening through the skin and saving your ears, I might add, if when you're playing too loud, too long. So you put the earplugs in, and now you play the gong, maybe so that you can cut out as much sound as possible here. And then you'll experience what a deaf person hears when the gong is playing. So it gives you another point of view.
If you remember, Don, when we did the Gong World Record, we had 220 gongs playing at the same time. And one of the things to prepare for that was I bought 1,000 sets of earplugs so that everybody had 3 or 4 sets during the day. And then they made the choice about pulling them in and out. And one evening we did a gong bath, a public gong bath. I think there was like 100 people there who came and laid down, very tightly packed like sausages in the hall, and we played for them. And I remember at one point it was like being inside a jet engine on a Boeing 747, and it was like I was thinking, oh, I had my earplugs in for that. I thought I need these in because this is powerful. But what happened was when I did that, something different happened to my body. It became more receptive. And what I remember, I did a gong. I played gong for in the Blind Institute in England, and everybody in the room was blind. And what I realized was I actually had to play quite low because their hearing was so sensitive. Because they developed this sense of hearing that was so delicate and sensitive. And the evening was also mixed with poetry. Some of the poetry was like traditional poems from London, and there was some Eastern stuff. And what they heard in my voice was was phenomenal. They were talking, they could pinpoint the region I was from, and they were even starting to describe my face from the sound. And that was a real, afterwards they came up and they were touching my face. They said, can I touch and feel your face? And they were feeling my bone structure, and then of course, I had some little white gloves and I let them put their hands on the gongs and feel the gongs, which for them was like, oh, it made this connection between the instrument and the sound, and they absolutely adored the whole experience. But it was definitely a different experience to people who were sighted to be non-sighted.
Well, and I like that now we all can add to our little box of tools preparation earplugs, and he mentioned having gloves so when people touch his gongs, they're not leaving their oily marks, like you said with the kids.
Well, it brings us to, mundane stuff. What's the best way to clean your gong?
I use a few things depending on what marks are on there. So always have a soft microfiber cloth with me, just for taking off marks that get on there, take it off quickly. And then I use Goddards silver polish. Goddards silver polish it's a really gentle polish, and it lasts forever. Add a bit of water and a sponge. And then for the more stubborn things, I use Sidol, which is what they use, when they're making gongs to clean the nickel silver first time round, and it gets off more stubborn marks. But don't use Sidol often.
Yeah.
Well, it brings us to the flume question. If we do use too much of a protective covering on the gong, the flumies don't work quite as well. But cleaning the flume trails, snail trails up each time is very important, because that can eat into the gong if you remove the
I wonder, Bob's, it's so nice to see you again. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your experience? Because I know you've been incorporating hypnotherapy and mediumship with your gong sessions. What's that been like?
Well, actually, I did a session. We did a session about 3 days ago, with a group, and it's funnily enough, I was doing a little bit of pranayama at the beginning, and then went into what was a mixture between a yoga nidra and a hypnotherapy session. Which, if you think about nidra, it's not a million miles away from hypnotherapy.
Very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar, except there's no response there. There's no response to suggestion as you would with a hypnotherapy session. But I took them through the process of basically dematerializing the body, so that all they were left with on the floor was their skeleton, and took them through a visualization of all the bone and flesh falling away. And one of the attendees after said, "Oh, I didn't know whether that was a hypnotherapy session or something else." And so the introduction of that there really was really powerful, because by the time we played, they were in such a deep state of relaxation, and had already started to shift from into kind of theta states before we even started to play. So we'd done like 40% of the work through the voice, and before we even started to play, which is a great tip, and it's why I think all gong players should start to develop this alongside their skills of being able to play the gong and other instruments around it. But I also use the gong and the bowl sometimes at the beginning and the end of the session. And what it does for a client is, one of the things it signals, we're starting and we're ending.
Sorry.
What a great sound. That sounds like a sound effect from a cartoon like Tom and Jerry, when he used to go boop, boop. So the gong really helps from the beginning and the end of a session, for the hypno, and also for Reiki. And Lindsay's been integrating it with her mediumship as well. So we're experimenting with lots of different things at the moment, but yeah, and it's fun.
That meditation, which I want to give credit to the person who did it, but I can't remember that idea of taking someone through a meditation of basically, disintegrating and dying. Um, remember who that
Tibetan
is?
death meditation.
Yes,
Tibetan,
Tibetan
yeah.
death meditation.
Yeah, we had to do it in death doula training.
So after it's done, do you reconstruct the people back, or are they finish in
Yeah, but
skeleton?
but I don't reconstruct them the same way that they took themselves apart, because everyone's got their own definition of what it feels like to do that kind of stripping away and decaying process. After the gong, after the shunya, then I talk them through a reintegration on a cellular level, on an atomic level, which is about allowing their imagination to bring 11 trillion cells back in a new configuration. So that they do this very quick kind of thing.
Recalibration.
Yeah, rather than saying, oh, now, replace this or replace that part of you. So then I take it down to a completely cellular level, more kind of a quantum rebuilding, which allows them to have this sense of a deeper sense of coming back together in a different way, yeah.
A good point. And I wanted to ask you as well, as we talk about after the gonging is over, after the sound therapy, the bowls is over, and we go into the special shunya center of silence, and then the people, how long do you usually allow them to soak that in before you bring them up? And how would you bring them up? And how would you handle the different sharing, the questions about the phenomena that they experienced?
Well, um, after all the sound has been, after everything's gone and fallen into decay, we leave them for minutes, and I think sometimes there is a temptation for the the person who's leading the gong bath to feel uncomfortable, like, oh, I need to say something or I need to do something. But our feeling is in that moment of integration is where all the work gets done. That's where everything happens. It's like the gong bath is the preparation for that. And then afterwards, when everything falls away, there's this beautiful silence. And that's like the magic hour at the end of the day. You only get 20 minutes of magic hour in a 24-hour day. If you compress that down, you get the 3, 4, 5 minutes at the end of a gong bath. It's like the magic minutes when that integration takes place and all the stuff happens as it all comes back. So typically minutes, like up to 5 minutes sometimes.
Some people don't want to come back. No.
Yeah, some people don't want to. They'll say afterwards, oh, do we have to come back?
I don't know where I was, but I wasn't in my body, or
Yeah.
they were on some other planet somewhere.
And then afterwards, with regards to questions, I almost run the questions like an AA meeting. It's an opportunity to share, and we all find identification through the sharing. So I introduce it like that. So it gives people, because some people are sometimes embarrassed to share because it may feel too far. So I'll say that that this is an opportunity to share something, and you may feel that it's insignificant, but to someone else it could be completely significant. And so we open the doors for each other to be brave and vulnerable with our sharing. So I like to think of it almost like that process.
The yams and yams, what you say and what you do not say is very important. Is it very important at that time?
Michael was raising his hand.
Thank you.
The very interesting question. I like this question. From my Virgo point of view, if we're doing 45 minutes of gong, we give them 4.5 minutes of silence. If we do 90 minutes of gong, it's 9 minutes. So there's a 10%, it's like 10% is what I find for me. If we're there for, 8 hours, Give them the time, give them the time to exactly what you're saying, Bob. Integrate, and that's the magic space. For I've gone round and round on the post gong in Dubai 20 years ago. I was all about ego, and it's like, okay, tell me how good I was at the end of this session, and tell me about your cosmic dolphins and all that. And what I found was people are coming to relieve stress, and for me, and it varies. If we're there for a weekend workshop and it's a retreat, yeah, we're going to process because we're going to get to that point of to process. But if you're there on a Monday night and this is your practice for meditation, I tell folks, you paid good money to be here. At the beginning of the session, I'll say, you paid good money to be here. I'm certainly not going to put you into a stressful situation by asking you to speak words at the end of this 45 minutes or at the end of this hour. So if you want to just get up and slink out and not say anything on the way out because you want to go to bed because you're in a relaxed state and you don't want to put yourself into higher blood pressure, higher heartbeat, higher respiration, because I'm asking you to share 3 words about your experience. That's not why people are coming to a weekly. So I think it varies to me depending on why people are coming and what the event is on how much sharing will be done, if any. Yeah, full moon gong, we're gonna have tea and biscuits and sharing will happen at full moon gong. But a Monday night meditation at the yoga center is not a place that I'm going to ask people to share. And I think it varies. It varies from place to place.
A little bit. Sometimes what we would do, and it's a lot of fun, of course. Everything we do is enjoyable. People would have a paper and pencil with them next to them while they're lying down. And there are different ways, of course, to do this. But basically, with the final hit, they would each, when they wanted to, sit up and write a line or a thought on a piece of paper. And then maybe just, okay, then go back and lie down again and complete the evening. And then afterwards, we might collect these papers and put them in a bowl. And then whoever's leading it would say, okay, let's see what we said, and begin to pull out each paper and read it and read it and read it, and this one and that one and that one. It's a very interesting experience of the group consciousness. Have you done that? Have you tried doing that type of thing? It has a value to it.
I've had at New Moon Circles, we've done something similar with, doing a collaborative prose or poetry. So after the gonging and the meditation, everyone writes down and then it gets read out like a collaborative composition, which is a nice way of utilizing some of that creativity that bubbles forth.
And also, there are times also that we have first aid. First aid for a gong bath gone wrong. Not necessarily that, I'm just joking, but the idea is that you have once in a while somebody who's going through some sort of private exorcism during the gong. What do you do when that happens and you have the gestures coming up and the screams and the crying and generally disturbance and like a nuisance, and everybody else is going, what the heck is going on? What do you do?
Erika.
Yes, I would go near the person and do a little bit of Reiki on them. If they don't want to be touched, I would just stay a little bit hovering and try to soothe them. and touch their feet. I find that touching their feet brings them back to the ground.
What about these people who just came for the first time and this event is happening and they're going, what did I walk into? How do you deal with those folks? They come in and they're getting a bit of a culture shock.
Victim by association or observation.
I think sometimes we embrace it. You know, if somebody's going through that, then, you know, maybe everybody needs to go through that. So let's all, you know, take a moment to have a deep breath and, you know, get some vocal, you know, out there. So we're all doing the and then let's see where that energy goes. I think sometimes new gong players want to be like, what do I, you know, not that any of us here are new, but it's like, I think we've seen it and maybe we felt it, you know, oh my gosh, what's going on? Do I just keep this person from rolling over into the next person? You know, is that my job here, just to keep people from touching each other? And I found, let's somehow transition into that breath and let's take that energy, embrace it, activate it, get it all up, and then let's, take longer breaths and see where that goes. That would be my best guess on that question.
In some cultures you can't touch. I mean, you might be able to, in California, let's say, you can gather all the people around and lay their hands and touch the person or into their aura.
Or just do Reiki hands, everyone sending that healing energy to that person.
So there are different ways. Yes?
Claudio.
Yeah, this happened quite a few times lately. So I developed this kind of protocol for myself, which is the first thing I do. Well, I am becoming more of an observer now. Instead of being in my gong thing, I'm observing more the crowd to see any signs of this happening. So this has really shifted me to that point of playing in full presence, but still observing. If I see something happening, first thing that I do, I will lower the intensity of my gonging in case I'm being intense, or if I'm going very low, I will stop it. So I'm going to give some kind of segue and give a bit of space of silence and then start again and see if the person starts again. And if I find a correlation between the gonging and the reaction of the person. If that's the case, I'll segue to something else. Tibetan bowl, crystal bowl, shamanic flute for a bit. And then I'll see what happens when I come back to the gong. If I come back to the gong and that happens again, then if it's only me playing, I will stay low, and then maybe I will go towards the person and not touch them, but just be present. But generally, I would say 3 out of 4 cases that I've had, this kind of sequential step has already kind of made the thing go away. And I think, and this I have not done, but I would say that the ultimate tool for that would be the conch, and blowing the conch. But I think one point that I find very important that I didn't do the first 2 times, and I did do the other 2, and I found a huge difference, is that I feel it's so important that the group receive some kind of sharing about what happened, that this is discussed, and people don't go home with some kind of feeling, what kind of cult did I join for this evening? So really the sharing of this and having the group kind of relaxed and showing that you are kind of there with your presence and you're carrying the group and you're holding the space is so important. And I kind of regret not having done it, but the first 2 times, but then, so this is kind of the approach that I have.
And I know that you, Claudio, you've heard Don say this so many times, but keeping that sense of Turiya neutrality while conducting that sharing without ego, and it's what the sharing and the answer to everything that comes out of the sharing, if it's perceived as scary or negative or angry or whatever, Don's answer, which I love, is that's perfect. That was the experience you were meant to have today. Bernarda.
I would like to thank Don and Bob. you learn me how to work for theater, and my pupils told me how I am talent for work for theater. Thank you. And just I want to say I first met Gong and the Dawn 2004 on Ij, Croatia. It was my first seminar with Dawn, and I didn't start studied about gong because I'm teacher. What about money for gongs? But when I decided to start study of gong, I wrote 2 mathematical books and money coming. you just need decide. Everything's coming. So thank you.
Claudio.
Great to see you, Bernarda. One thing I forgot to say in that little checklist that I have for these situations is that I have I'm working a lot with the ascended master energy in the gong, and I am really physically when this happens, I would bring my gong, my left hand, to close to the gong while I'm playing. If I see somebody, and I connect with Serapis Bay and the fourth ray, and I will consciously send from my right hand this energy to the person remotely, also as part of my little checklist. And I do see that working, and it's wonderful.
Could you share with everybody about the green ray, the fourth ray of, what is the fourth ray all about? It's so important to us.
Well, the fourth ray, from my understanding, it has to do all with harmony, and it's related to also to the preservation of Earth. Actually, it's harmony and balance, and each ray has a master, which is its portal, who is kind of its guardian that allows us to access that consciousness. And in the case of the fourth ray of harmony, that will be Serapis Bey, who is supposed to have been Akhenaton in one of his incarnations, the Egyptian pharaoh.
I'm going to just put a little plug of a seed/dream. For those of you who know Surana, the Gong Muse, she talked to us a week or 2 ago about bringing back the trip to Egypt that was planned for 2020 that got canceled. And so if you want to just kind of plant that in your seed to join us, we are dreaming up Dawn's 88th birthday, which is September 8th of this year, in Luxor. And it is going to be a group, less so of a training and more so just a convergence and a meeting of Gong players, Gong masters, and group consciousness to Gong. And Don's already expressed that on September 8th, which is midweek, he'd like to do a hot air balloon Gong. So... And then I think the full moon is 2 days later, if I remember correctly. So kind of put that out there. Just like Bernardo says, who knows about the finances, but we'll make it happen, right? We'll sell another book. So that's kind of percolating there. So it's funny that you brought up Serapis Bay, because she was sharing she lived there during 9 months of COVID time. And there's a temple that's related to all the different anatomical body parts. So this idea of going our group into the various chambers and doing a meditation on that body part and the significance of that and gonging in those various areas. It sounded like just a wonderful trip of a lifetime.
It will be. I hope that we're all there together.
That would be exciting.
Yes. So how much time do we have left?
We've kind of gone over, but I just wonder, Hannah, Ines, would you like to share any thoughts or plans, past, present, or future, for gonging, full moon gonging, spring equinox that's coming up, or maybe just an observation or reflection from the last 90 minutes.
Yes, hello everybody. Greetings from Czechia, Prague. Greetings to Claudio. I will meet you in the end of April on our training here in Czechia together with Andrea. And and I will give gong bath tomorrow and also day after tomorrow, and at two different places, and also with two of my friends, both Kundalini yoga teachers. We are giving a retreat for spring equinox from Wednesday next week till Sunday, 5 days. So there will be plenty of yoga, meditation, and gong healing, and also Satnam Rasayan. So cooperation by 3 people.
Fantastic.
So, very busy week from tomorrow.
I would like to, just first of all, I'd like to post this for people who weren't able to make this meeting, these monthly full moon gatherings, so that people who weren't able are able to watch it. So just please, if you have any issues with this being posted and your sharing being posted, drop me a line and let me know. And then also, if you don't mind, in the chat box, writing your contact information, maybe your Facebook page or your website, so that if people are watching this and they do want to connect with you for your various events, that will be in the description of the video as well, so that they can we can continue to build up this beautiful global web. So we've got here New Jersey, Czechia, Texas, Mexico, Croatia, Belgium. Ines, where are you? Are you in Germany? She's in Germany, yeah?
You know, Bob, remember this song, My Buddy Lies Over the Ocean, My Buddy Lies Over the Sea, Bring Back My Gong Buddy to Me? So the idea of if we can begin to grow more of the tree, for instance, an assignment might be, if you want to consider it, is that 5 of your gong buddies or friends, one in each country, to begin to strengthen those ties between you and your gong buddies over the ocean or somewhere else like that. And that way we can begin to help the growth a little more fully.
That kind of segues into the actual topic before we went off on moon and equinox tangents of re-energizing this International Gong Masters Alliance, this idea of putting together an alliance of gong players, gong masters, people who have embraced this idea of utilizing the gong and sound towards that mission statement of peace and cooperation and that 4th ray.
And don't forget the horn, the conch shell. So important that this 5 ratio C horn be used, especially as you mentioned before, for exorcism. One time that a person came to me, and she had like 20 spirits in her diaphragm that were locked in there because she took a trip to jungle one time, and the guy did that to her. So I had to exercise or be an instrument for removal of these entities. One was worse than the other, and to be able to free the person. And so I can tell you there's no greater instrument to blow into the stomach than a sea horn, and that'll exercise. You may have to do it several times or whatever, but then that opens the door so that these can leave the being. Have you had an experience yet with your blowing of the conch shells and that? Yeah. So for those of you who don't blow the conch shell, I don't know, what do you play it? Conch shell?
Well, I think idea of the diaphragm. What's interesting is the rib cage. I can't see with the zoom. It connects right there. It's called your xiphoid process. It's that little bone that hangs down, and that it's almost like a little protective shield to protect the diaphragm. That's the point called Ren 14, which is your emotional heart. So whereas your heart's up here, your emotional heart is down here. So this idea of entities or stagnation or whatever it is that gets stuck there, utilizing the power of the conch shell to blow out in that area, or from the back around, you said T8, T10?
L5, L4.
No, L5, L4 would be lower down.
A little too far down.
Yeah, so it's like a T8, T10. The back,
All right,
like
yes,
where your
you're
bra
right.
line is, you know? So those areas are very powerful to use for the horn. We've never talked about this that I can recall, but you just brought up going down towards the lumbar, like where your hips meet your sacrum, and that area, which is more second chakra area, what's indicated for blowing the horn in that lower region, which is also called your dantian, or in martial arts is your power source, or your prostate, or your uterus? Have you ever blown the horn down there, and if so, why?
Well, the first time that I learned it, we learned how to pull the skin away from the spine using this mudra here and rolling it like that. And so when you do that, let's say, starting from the bottom and going to the top, you would then have these nitrogen type pops. Nitrous oxide, I suppose you would say, releasing that energy from the different vertebrae of the spine. So early on, we learned how to do that, to relieve that pressure of the different vertebrae. So I don't know if you have learned how to do that or not.
Do you guys know what finger rolling is, where you put your finger and you roll the person's skin? This is used, it's like you put your finger like this and you just move the fingers up the skin, and it's used a lot with children who are developmentally or physically delayed so your brain connects with your spine and all of the organs come out through the spinal nerve. So doing that finger rolling, going towards the brain, is really helpful for kids who have delays in growth and development.
Well, we'll have to remember to practice that when we have our next workshop.
Depending on your country, are you allowed to touch people?
That's right. You may not be able to touch people. So,
yeah.
But
has anyone used obviously we're not going to blow the conch from here up. We want to protect their ears. And we've talked a lot about blowing in the diaphragm, but has anyone used the conch for other places like the dantian, or Claudio?
I use it very frequently in the dantian. I use it in the lower lumbar, but also when I experienced this in GMT with Don, having four people actually, four conchs, going around and moving in a circle up from the lumbar up the spine, and that's actually how I'm teaching now, because I have a module on the conch now in my trainings, and that's how we do. We get four people, four conchs, and then we spin around. And sometimes we would concentrate in 3 points, so dantian, then the solar plexus with this emotional center, and then right up to the neck. So right below the neck, first point, then solar plexus, then lumbar, both sides, and then just going up and down and moving around, counterclockwise, and that's incredible.
Fun exercise as well, using the sacred geometry of the spiral, like the shell itself, or the double helix of a DNA cord. That sounds fun. I want to come in April. Claudio and Andrea are doing their collaborative training in April. And there's a time crunch because Andrea is pregnant, so she'll be giving...
She reached out and...
She's going to be missing out on our summer tour because she's going to be with her new gong baby.
Let's cover the subject slightly about gonging while women are pregnant. What's the ifs, ands, and that's all about? What is your opinion about when to actually to gong the baby inside and when not to do that?
I mean, I have opinions.
What's your opinion?
This always gets brought up in trainings, and it's like, I know that we talk about when was the first time you heard a gong, and I'll say that I'm turning 49 in August, and I can't recall it because I was gonged in utero, I was gonged while I was giving birth, so you guys took away my opportunity to consciously have a first gong memory. I am totally fine with that. So, but the point is, I don't think I turned out bad.
No.
And I have 3 children, a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And if anything, I think the gong has only enhanced the pregnancies and the way they turned out on many different levels. So I think really what it comes down to is what we call risk and malpractice. Depending on your country or your community, what do you feel comfortable with? And also having a very clear communication with your group. So during my pregnancies, I was gonging pregnant women specifically because that was what I was going through. I was gonging like mommy and me, pregnant women, women with really small babies, parts of yoga classes. So we've been gonging the kids from basically a couple weeks old through. And I've never had a bad experience, but there is a consciousness of, like Bob was saying, is I don't play strong. Like, I don't get up there. It's all very soothing. It's the lullaby for the baby. Because that's the intention. The intention is less is more.
Yes.
And less is more and less is powerful. And so there's no need to go crazy. So that's also for me, like when you're doing something that maybe there's 30 or 50 people there, I always ask, who is this your first time? Find out who the virgins are. Find out who are the people where it's their first time going through this experience. Is anyone have any specific concerns, ailments?
Well, you remember when you were in the womb, of course, and it was noisy. It was like being in a boiler factory. It was horrible.
It was not horrible.
Andy had little tiny ears like that so that we could cut most of the noise out of it. But then you hear the gong on the outside. And all of a sudden it said, hey, maybe it's safe to come out. And so whenever a woman was giving birth, we play the gong while the process of the baby is coming out to make it a more easier transition because, but not to play it too loud.
I, of course, had to Google it while we were talking, and it says sounds from outside the mother's body are muffled inside the womb. Obviously, there's layers and layers of fluid and tissue, but not completely silenced, which is why after 4 months, they say start talking to the baby. Some experts think that pregnant women should not be routinely exposed to noises louder than 115 dBA, which is roughly as loud as a chainsaw.
Oh my God. Well, one thing I think is very important is that when a woman is pregnant in India, the idea is to treat them like they were a goddess of the goddess. Everybody would be so careful around mama because of the idea is that the outside noises don't cause an emotional reaction in the mother because that affects the child. I don't know if that works or not, or if that happened in your life as well when you were born.
Well, the thing also is if you have gone through pregnancy or you haven't, I'll just give you a little 411. It's really like the loud noises. So I remember we went to Universal Studios and we were in one of those experiences and it was, I don't know, those 3D movies where it was like, boom! And then the baby inside of me was like, boom! And I was like, okay, yeah, you heard that. And so there's a difference between, like, I don't know, did that traumatize my kid to hear that loud boom? I don't know, but they definitely reacted to it. But the thing with the gong is if you are being conscious about bringing up and down, there isn't that loud sound. the sound inside the womb, as was explained to me, is if you're running like a loud vacuum cleaner, you got the heartbeat, you've got all the blood circulating. It is loud in there. So you're competing. You are. It's not like the baby's quiet and listening to the gong, you know? It's just experiencing that, and it's experiencing the mom's pleasure. If the mom is relaxing and enjoying it, those hormones
That's
and those
important.
endorphins are being released. And even that may or may not get to the baby depending on what's happening through the placenta, which is a filter. So I think a lot of people are
Don't be too
concerned about
crazy,
it.
but not too much.
But the concern really is fear, and that fear is the unknown.
Yeah.
And if someone is fearful, I would say do not go to a gong bath before the 3rd month, because the 3rd month, if there's going to be a miscarriage, it's typically in those first 3 months. And then if anything happens, the inclination of the human is to say, what did I do in the last 24 hours that caused this miscarriage?
What do you think, Bob?
Well, I think if you're smart, you can use it to your advantage. I used to play a lot of didgeridoo 25, 30 years ago, and my son's 25 now. And even now, if I play the didge, he starts to fall asleep. So, you know, you can introduce sounds that you can use when they're on the outside, as it were, that can help to soothe when they feel distressed. Because, you know, sound also travels further through water. Think about how whales communicate over vast distances. And, you know, my son also started to play didgeridoo. And the frequencies of the didge are not, you know, they're very similar to frequencies inside the gong. And yeah, I was playing it so much that when he was born and he would start to cry, I would realize that when I played it, it soothed him and he used to start to fall asleep fairly rapidly. So you can use also, you know, if you're smart, use it as a tool.
I wanted to go back for a second just to cover something about giving opinions after the bath or after the gonging, or the experience where you do a review. If anybody has anything you'd like to share, feel free to share about. We do that because we care so much for them, and we realize that just by expressing themselves, that is going to help the healing or the making whole process. The danger is, of course, is that putting people in a box by giving your opinion. So this is an art that we sometimes have to develop over a period of time, how to remain and keep the state of Turia there without disturbing it. You know? It's time to quit.
It's time. Yeah, we're in the last. We're past the last bit of time, but this was very fun, and we're looking forward to meeting up again next month. I will do a better job because I noticed that when I posted it last month, it said recurring meeting. It didn't give the exact time, so I'll make sure to get that going. It's been a lot of fun, and I will go ahead and place this up there.
Five. Each one of us will make sure that we have 5 people from different countries that we
connect with.
Yes, connect with.
Oh, there we go. Michael's sending out Reiki hands to everybody with the 5. Bernarda,
10
all
people.
right.
10 people.
10.
She's committed to 10 people.
Now we're up to 10. All right. Peace. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.